Welcome to Anime Reviewed. Today we are going to cover the series named Ranking of Kings. Make sure to give us a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel to see great shows from all over the world for free. Let's begin. The story of Ranking of Kings revolves around Prince Bojji, who usually gets mocked by people around him as he can't hear or speak. In a flashback, Bojji's mother, the first Queen Sheena, comforts Bojji after he was bullied by someone. They make a promise to each other that Bojji will be the strongest king in the world. The scene then shifts to Bojji, who is wandering around the kingdom. He comes across a shadow named Cage who tells him to give up all his money. Surprisingly, Cage can understand what Bojji is trying to say, and Bojji also understands him by looking at the way he speaks. Cage takes all of his clothes and tells him to come back again with better clothes tomorrow. Everybody makes fun of Bojji as he was walking without clothes through the town. The process of giving clothes to Cage goes on for a few more days. One day, Cage decides to follow Bojji. Like most other days, he gets bullied by the children and the townsfolk. He gets scolded by the second queen, Hilling, for tarnishing the dignity of the family. Among the queens were other people, which included Bojji's teacher and translator Domas. She tells Bojji that he is not fit to be a king, whilst also telling Domas to not translate it, thinking that Bojji won't understand what she is saying. Domas tells Bojji that his father, King Bos, who ranks 7 among all the kings, summoned him. Bojji goes into his room to dress up. Cage follows him and sees that he is crying due to all the bullying he faces, but he goes outside with a smile regardless and keeps a happy face for the people. Cage tries to follow Bojji, but is stopped by Bibin. Bos holds Bojji's hands and expresses his love for him, while also saying that his hands are soft as compared to Data's strong hands. Bojji tells Domas to train Bojji even more rigorously. Meanwhile, Cage is being chased by Bibin, who mentions that Cage's whole assassin clan was killed for attempting to kill their king. He then asks Cage about whom he wants to assassinate in castle. He hurts Cage, but Cage manages to escape in the shadows. As Bojji is practicing, Domas takes his anger out on training equipment for not being able to teach Bojji. Data arrives and tells Domas that he wants to spar with Bojji for a bit. As Bojji isn't ready, he spars with Data instead and gets impressed by his skills. Bojji then challenges Data afterward as Domas gets impressed by his skills. Various people came to see the two brothers fight with each other. Data attacks Bojji, but Bojji dodges all of his attacks and hits him in the head lightly. Episode 2 of the series reveals the tragic backstory of Cage. In the kingdom in which they resided, the assassin clan was being hunted by the soldiers for attempting to kill the king. Cage's mother bought time for him so he could escape while she put up a brave fight against soldiers, but she was killed eventually. Cage escaped and hid in a spider toy of a girl named Poise. The guards come and ask the girl and father about the whereabouts of Cage. Seeing his mother dead and hanging from a spear, Cage starts to cry, which notifies the soldier, but the girl cries along with him to hide his sound. The guards eventually go away and Cage goes on his journey to a nearby kingdom. There he is struggling to find some food for himself and even gave up his only toy in exchange for some fruit, but he was captured and beaten by the people. A thief rescued Cage and gave him some leftover food. Cage cleaned the person's home for days and stole for him just for leftover food and a few coins. One day, the thief saw a wanted poster of Cage, so he alerted the guards about him. Cage manages to escape before coming back to the thief's home, but he just told Cage to go away from him. The thief went to a nearby guard and picked a fight with a person who shoved a dagger in his chest, causing him to die. Cage grieves for him, but eventually goes away. He bumps into Bojji and the story continues. Cutting to the present, Bojji continues to dodge Data and hits him with what little power he has. Domas tells Bojji to fight Data without dodging. Data beats Bojji without any remorse but stops when Appias, who is one of the big 4 in the kingdom, intervenes. Meanwhile, Bojji is covered in bandages, which makes Domas feel sorry for him due to his lack of strength. When he goes away, Bojji gets out of his and tries to lift a sword but fails. A mysterious lady comes and heals Bojji while Cage is noticed by Bibin again. Afterward, everyone stands in the king's bedchamber due to his demise. His will is then read by a person who declared that the successor of the throne would be Bojji. As people were reacting to this news, a demon came out of the king's body. It pointed towards Bojji before vanishing into thin air. Data goes to his room and questions the lady in the mirror about the ascension, as according to her, Data was supposed to be the king. The lady comforts her by saying that everything is going as planned. Sometime later, during a public announcement, Data's name is announced as the successor of the kingdom, because of a meeting held by Hilling where most people voted in favor of Data to be the next king. Meanwhile, Cage, who was trapped in a prison cell, escapes, but he is surrounded by Bibin's snakes. Bibin demands Cage tell him about the person he came here to kill. Cage tells that he came to the castle only to help Bojji. Afterward, Bibin visits Bojji and asks if he knows Cage. When he replies positively, Bibin tells him that Cage has gone on a long journey. Bojji goes to the head of the snakes and asks the head snake about the whereabouts of Cage. The snake comforted him by saying that Cage is safe and he has made a deal with Bibin. The scene then shifts to Bibin and Appiah's fighting as the former was tasked to kill Appiah's under King Data's orders. Appiah shoves a spear through his chest, causing him to fall to the ground. Bojji asks Hilling if he can go on a long journey. When she starts scolding him, he goes away crying. Bojji then goes to his room and tries to escape through the window. Bojji falls from the window but luckily falls on his bag. Hilling heals him, which reveals that she was the one that healed him earlier too. Hilling remembers her efforts to get close to Bojji and how much they loved each other, but she became biased toward him when Data came into her life. Afterward, she gives Bojji to go on a journey and sends Domas and Hokuro as his guards. The lady in the mirror tells Data that he needs to care for Bojji, whilst also telling him to gain power from King Bosa's dead body. Bojji and the others continue on their journey through different places before finally reaching a town. There, Bojji separates from the others and sleeps near a fountain, causing his bag to get stolen. Domas scolds both of them for their carelessness, but luckily they find the bad in the road they are traveling in. They got to a restaurant to eat something before going on with their journey. As they are going, Bojji separates from them again and falls into a cave. There he meets a caveman whom Bojji eats and dances with, but runs back to the others later when the man threatens him. The trio reaches a town that has a gate of hell nearby. Domas mentions that the Order of the Underworld prevents the monsters from coming out of the hole. The three go into the town where Domas tells Hokuro to find him a place to stay. When he goes away, Domas takes Bojji to see the gate of hell up close. Domas mentions that the hole spews out hellfire every few minutes. Domas then takes the opportunity to shove Bojji into the hole before going away and feeling miserable for doing so. Meanwhile, Data wakes up from a weird nightmare and tells the lady in the mirror that he wants to consume his father's strength right away. Bojji falls through the hole, but he is rescued with the help of Cage, who has been in his bag all along. Cage mentions that he was the one that rescued him from the fall and returned his bag that got stolen, whilst also saving Bojji when Domas tried to give him poisonous meat. Cage tells Bojji that Bibin told him to protect Bojji. They proceed further down hell to meet a man that can strengthen anyone. In a flashback, it is revealed that Data had ordered Domas to kill Bojji. As Bojji and Cage and going down the hell, they get trapped in poisonous flames that came from hell. They become unconscious but are luckily rescued by the Underworld Order. The scene then shifts to Data, who goes underground into the castle along with the mirror and two people into a room where things are preserved and frozen. There the lady reveals that the king was frozen right after his death and orders her minions to crush the king into the marrow. Meanwhile, Appiah is making his way to that underground place as well. The minions make an elixir with the marrow in a rather weird and strange way, which will give Data the strength of his father. The lady tells Data to drink the elixir, but Data, seeing how the elixir was made, refuses to drink it. The lady reminds him of his 90th rank among all the kings and orders his minion to capture Data, but he defeats them easily. Cage and Bojji are brought in front of the second-ranked King Desha, who reveals that Bojji's powers were taken away from him. Meanwhile, Horiko arrives at the gates of hell and finds out about Doma's actions. He attacks Domas, who blocked his attack with the hand he used to shove Bojji with. He gets Hokuro in the head and cuts the remaining part of his hand clean off. Desha asks Bojji about his reason for coming here. Cage replies for him, but the king tells Bojji to speak. Cage tells Desha that he can't speak or hear, which makes him laugh. Desha tells the two that he is the king of the underworld. When Cage asks Desha to train Bojji, he orders the captain of the Order of the Underworld to spar with Bojji. Bojji hits the captain with all his power, but it was just non-existent, unlike the case with his dodging, as he dodged the captain's attack rather easily. Cage gives Desha a recommendation letter after the king refused to train Bojji. He reads the letter and orders his soldiers to throw them outside, where the captain tells the two that the person they are looking for is the king's brother. Meanwhile, Appiah sneaks into the underground area and attempts to kill Data, but the lady in the mirror stops him. Appiah recognizes the voice and calls her Lady Miranjo. In a flashback, King Bos took Appias to Miranjo so she could train him into a warrior. At the present, Appias asks why she is in a mirror, but Miranjo just brushes it off. Appias mentions that he must make Bojji king according to Bos's will. Miranjo then tells him something secret in return, which makes Appias totally surprised. Data tries to execute Appias stealthily, but Miranjo stops him. Afterward, Appias punch him and they make him drink the elixir forcefully. Meanwhile, Cage and Bojji reach the house of the king's brother Despa. They think of him as a rather mean person, but he turns out to be a gentleman. That's all for today. How will the story continue for Bojji? Let us know in the comments down below. Do leave a like if you want a second season story, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content.